Hi friends, it's Julie. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with my July wrap-up for you guys. Now, I know I typically don't do end of the month wrap-ups, but I really sucked at doing my reading check-in videos this month, so yeah, we're just gonna kind of roll with it a little bit. I did have a really good reading month in July. I finished 7 books, and 4 of those were audiobooks. I don't think I've ever listened to as many audiobooks in a month as I did in July. So I'm going to try and make this video not super long, so let's just get started. Oh, I do want to say I'm going to try something new this month, and I'm going to talk about my favorite books first, and then work my way down to my least favorite books of the month. That way I can spend more time talking about the books that I love, and less time talking about the books that I didn't particularly love. So yeah, anyway, let's just get started. So to start things off, I'm going to talk about my favorite book from this month. And if you watched my last video, this is no surprise at all, and that would be Tin Man by Sarah Winman. And guys, this book just surprised me so much. Like, I almost DNF'd it. I was about 40 pages into it, and I wasn't connecting to it at all. I think I was reading too many books at the same time, because I do that sometimes to myself. But one night I decided, okay, I'm going to read 20 more pages of this book. If I'm not hooked by then I'm going to DNF it, because I don't have any problem doing that. So I read 20 more pages, and within those 20 pages something is revealed, and at that point I knew I was going to finish this book, and I knew I was going to love it. So the next morning I woke up and I read the last 150 pages in one sitting, and they just destroyed me. I honestly sobbed through the last 100 pages of this book. It was kind of ridiculous, actually. My husband came upstairs while I was reading this book, like the last pages, and I'm just sobbing on the couch, and he looks at me, he's like, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" And I'm like, "This book, it's just destroying me." And he's like, "Well, put it down and come back to it, you know, read something happy." I'm like, I cannot put this book down at this point. Like, I'm so invested in these characters, in the story, like I have to know what's going to happen. And that's how you know that you're reading a great book, when you're just like reading through your tears. So anyways, let me just tell you a little bit about what this book is about. So this story is told from the perspective of 2 men. One man named Ellis, the other Michael, and the first half is told from Ellis's perspective. And when we meet Ellis, he is just very sad and depressed, and we find out that's because his wife has died in a car accident. And so every night Ellis goes to work at this factory, and then he comes home, he gets drunk, and then his days just repeat. He does have some friends that try and, you know, get him to come out and do things, but he just can't. He's just stuck in this rut. He just can't move past it. And so that's going on in Ellis' section, as well as we go back in time and we learn about his relationship with his mother, and then we also learn about his friendship with this boy named Michael. And they met when they were about 13 years old, and that friendship ultimately starts to grow into something else. And then it talks about Ellis and how he met his wife Annie, and that's just really what we focus on in Ellis's section. And then we switch over to Michael's perspective, and we learn about what's going on with Michael right now, as well as it also goes back in time and talks about Michael's relationship with Ellis's mother. They were also very close, and how much Ellis's friendship meant to Michael, and how that started to grow into something more, how much that meant to him, and then ultimately what that felt like when Ellis met Annie. See, I could cry just talking about this book. It was honestly so beautiful. I have not read a book that has affected me this much in a really long time. I just absolutely loved it. I loved her writing. It just, like, it broke my heart, but without being over the top. And then there is this hopefulness at the end of the book, and oh, it was just absolutely incredible. I cannot recommend this book enough, honestly. I can't wait to read more of Sarah Winman's work. Honestly, I think my only criticism of it would be that I thought the beginning was a little bit slow, but honestly, that also could have just been me. You know, I'm not used to reading a lot of literary fiction, and also I was reading a lot of books at the same time when I started this. So yeah, just absolutely beautiful book, and I cannot recommend it enough. Then my second favorite book of the month is definitely The Good Daughter by Karin Slaughter. Now, I know I've already talked about this book a couple times on my channel, but I'm just going to talk about it one more time because this is my wrap up. But I just loved this book. I love this one even more than Pretty Girls by her, which I know is kind of an unpopular opinion. I think Pretty Girls tends to be most people's favorite. It moves a little bit quicker than this one does, but honestly, it just connected so much more to the characters in this story. So in this book, we follow this woman named Charlie, who is a defense lawyer, and her father is also a defense lawyer in her town, but he typically tends to take on very high-profile, controversial cases, and Charlie doesn't typically do that. But actually, at the beginning of this book, When Charlie is a young girl, these two men come to her home who are upset about a case that her father has been working on, and they end up brutally attacking her, her sister, and her mother. It's very graphic and really intense. Like the first 100 pages of this book are just super intense because after that brutal attack takes place, we then go forward in time and Charlie is now a grown woman and her husband are currently separated. They're just having some issues, and she makes the mistake of having a one-night stand with this man outside this bar, and somehow their cell phones get switched, and so she goes to his workplace the next day. He works as a teacher at a middle school, and while she's at the school to get her cell phone, a school shooting takes place. And so that's the mystery that we're solving throughout this book. There's just some weird things surrounding this school shooting, and so all of that is kind of taking place throughout this book, and the end honestly isn't a surprise. Like I had the very ending twist figured out. However, there is a good twist before that one takes place that I did not see coming at all. So Karen Slaughter definitely kept me on my toes with that one. I was just completely blindsided by it. But honestly, what sets Karen Slaughter apart from all the other thriller writers out there is her characters. I was so connected to Charlie, and I was really invested in her and her relationship with her husband and how all of that was going to play out. And there were just so many things that were revealed in this book. And I honestly like teared up at one point. Like I don't remember the last time a thriller has made me tear up. So yeah, Karen Slaughter has definitely become one of my favorite authors, and I can't wait to go back and read all of her old books. She has so many out, and she has a new one coming out this year. And yeah, I'm so happy to have found a new author that I love. Then another book I really enjoyed this month was Red Clocks by Lenny Zumas. Now I didn't end up loving this book as much as I was expecting to, but honestly I think that's because this is a case of it's me, not the book. So let me kind of explain. So this story is about a future United States where the conservatives have taken over every branch of the government, and they have passed this personhood amendment which gives rights to embryos. So abortion has now become illegal. In fact, it's considered murder, and they're like locking women up. In vitro fertilization is now illegal, and in order to adopt a child you have to be a part of a heterosexual couple. And yeah, it doesn't really seem that far-fetched with everything going on. And in this story we follow about 4 different women's perspectives and how these new laws are affecting them. And honestly, I liked so many things about this book. I loved the writing style, which I know a lot of people are not the biggest fan of, but I got on with it just fine. I loved the different points of view. I thought it gave you a really well-rounded story and really made you think about these laws and how this could affect people even when they don't think that they're going to affect them. However, this book just made me really uncomfortable. I think it's because I was reading the story when we found out that one of our Supreme Court justices was stepping down, and just all the speculation about what's going on. And this isn't to get political or anything, but I was already having a lot of anxiety over everything that's going on. I still am having a lot of anxiety about it. And this book did not help my anxiety. In fact, I feel like it made it worse, and it just made me really uncomfortable. And so, like I said, I think this is a case of it's me, not the book. I think if I would have chose to read the story at a different time, I would have had different feelings about it. But I still really enjoyed it. I mean, it's my 3rd favorite book from this month. I didn't fully love this book, and that's really my reason why. But I still definitely recommend it. I think it really makes you think. Now switching gears, I have a horror novel I want to talk about, and that is The Summer Has Ended and We Are Not Yet Saved by Joey Camus. And this book was so fun. It was everything that I thought it was going to be. It was like if somebody turned a slasher film into a book, this is what you would get. So this book is about these kids who go to a church summer camp, and the pastor of this camp ends up being a psychopath and decides that he just wants to kill all these kids, really brutally murder all these children. There really is no rhyme or reason to it. It's not super deep or anything like that. It's honestly, this man is just a psychopath and he wants to kill these children. And this book has some really graphic scenes. I think graphic violence is kind of the theme for this month for me. Very, very graphic scenes, and surrounding really young kids. I mean, I think the youngest kid to die in this book is 10, so do know that going into it. But it honestly just reads like a slasher film. It's exactly what I wanted this summer. I think it's perfect for the summertime. It's super short, it's like 200 pages, and I really enjoyed it. I would definitely read more books by Joey Camus. Alright, the last 3 books I'm going to talk about are all books I listened to on audio. The first one is Heartsick by Chelsea Cain. This is a thriller that I actually own a physical copy of, but I decided I wanted to check out the audio version of it. I'd heard that it was pretty good, and I have to agree, but I typically love to listen to thrillers on audio. I move through them so quickly this way. and this book was no exception. I listened to it in just a few days, and I really enjoyed it. It was pretty fun. I didn't figure out who the killer was before the end, so that's always a pleasant surprise. And I think I'll continue to listen to these. But these are books surrounding this man named Archie, who is a detective, and who at one point before this book is taking place, he was hunting down this serial killer, and it ended up being this woman named Gretchen, who ends up finding Archie first, and she kidnaps him and tortures him for like 10 days, and he almost dies, and she ends up calling an ambulance and turning herself in. So Gretchen is now in prison, and she meets with Archie once a week, and she gives him information on other people that she's murdered, where other bodies are buried, so on and so forth. And Archie meets with her every week on Sunday, and they talk, and there's this weird kind of Stockholm syndrome stuff going on, but now there is this new serial killer in town, and they're murdering these girls after school, and so Archie is put on this case, and he kind of gets a little bit of help from Gretchen. There's also this reporter that's doing this story on Archie. There's just a lot of stuff going on in this book, but it was really fun. It moved really quickly. And yeah, I think I'll continue on with this series, and then I'll let you guys know what I think about it. I will say though, I read the synopsis for the next book, and it seems a little over the top. Like, I think Gretchen escapes from prison or something like that. Then the next book I want to talk about is Good Me, Bad Me by Allie Land. Now, I think this book is categorized as a psychological thriller, and I would not label it as that at all. I think this is more of like a dark character study. So in this book, we follow this young girl named Annie, whose mother is a serial killer. And in this book, we follow Annie as she turns her mother in, and as she's put into foster care and prepares for her mother's trial. She's going to be a witness for the prosecution, and we just follow Annie as she is dealing with all of these emotions surrounding the case, and then what happens afterwards. So like I said, this is more of a character study with some really dark material. I mean, there are some triggers, I want to say, for sexual abuse and physical abuse in this book. And ultimately, it's just about Annie struggling to come to terms with herself. And, you know, she's always questioning if she has bad tendencies, you know. I mean, she's the daughter of a serial killer. So all of that's kind of interesting. I felt that the book moved really, really slow. I honestly don't think I would have gotten through this if I was reading it in physical format. If you're going to pick this up, I do recommend the audio. I think the narration is done really well. And I mean, I wanted to keep listening to it. I wanted to find out what was going to happen. But it just moves really slowly, and don't go into it expecting a big twist. I mean, there is something that happens at the end of this book, but you can see it coming from a mile away. Like, I knew the direction this book was going to take. There is no real big twist or anything. That's why I wouldn't label it as a psychological thriller. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just very lukewarm about this book. Then the last book I'm going to talk about is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. This is a horror classic. I'm sure you've probably heard of it or watched the movie with Will Smith. It's about the last man on Earth. Everyone else has become a vampire, and he's just trying to figure out how to survive and navigate this new world. He does like experiments on the vampires and so on and so forth. And I think I would have enjoyed this book more if I would have sat down and read it in physical format. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the narration of this book is done really well. However, this was a case of it's me, not you again. I think I was just really distracted while I was listening to this book. I really enjoyed the narration, I just didn't pick up on everything. So this is going to be a book that I revisit in the future and read in physical format, because after I was finished listening to it, I was really confused by the ending. So like, I looked it up online, and people were having like really deep conversations about this book. And so I know that there's more to it than just like surface level stuff. So I do want to go back and reread this book in the future. It's just this month listening to it, it just didn't work for me. So those are all the books that I read this month. Please leave me a comment down below and let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them, or if you read anything great this month. I would love to know, as always. But I think that's it. I hope you all are having a fabulous day, and I will see you all again very soon. Happy reading. Bye.